at with adding and subtracting rational expressions is before we can add or subtract a fraction, the first thing that we have to be able to do is to find what's called the least common denominator. It's LCD, least common denominator. So that goes in the blank at the top of your page. So before you can add or subtract a fraction, you have to find the least common denominator. So that's the first thing. So we're going to start on the left side of this page. I'm going to zoom in to the left, and we're going to look at how we would do it if it was just numbers. And then we'll go to the right side of the page and talk about how we do it with algebra, with x's. Okay, so least common denominator is how you add or subtract. So, for instance, we go over here on the left side, we look at A. A says 1/3 plus 3/4. If you want to add 1/3 and 3/4, they don't have the same denominator. So you have to find their least common denominator. So you say, what's the smallest number that 3 will go to and 4 will go to? And that would be 12. So you start counting 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. You count by threes. 3, 6, 9, 12. So 12 is the smallest number that both the 3 and the 4 will go to. So you say, okay, how do I get 3 to 12? Well, I got to multiply it by 4. So I multiply the top and the bottom by 4. And then in the other fraction, you say, how do I get the 4 to 12? Well, 4 times 3 gets you to 12. So I multiply the top and the bottom times 3. Okay? So when I do that, 1 times 4 is 4, and 3 times 3 is 9. So on top, I have 4 plus 9. And on the bottom, I just have 12, because I now have I have common denominators. And 4 plus 9 is 13. So the answer is 13 over 12. So that's something that you should have done probably years ago when you were trying to find a common denominator, probably back in like about 6th grade maybe, when you had to find a common denominator of two fractions that were numbers. All right, so let's go to B. In B, we say, okay, we got the numbers 8 and 6. Well, we need to find the smallest number that both of them go to. So 8, 16, 24, 6, 12, 18, 24. So they both go to 24. That'd be the smallest number. So how do you get 8 to 24? You multiply by 3. So we're going to multiply both by 3. How do you get 6 to 24? You multiply them by 4. Okay. So I changed those numbers, I think. It should be 3 over 8 plus 5 over 6, if it's different on your paper. Changed them to make it work. 3 over 8 plus 5 over 6. We want to make that into the least common denominator. So we multiply by 3 to the first fraction. We multiply by 4 to the second fraction. And again, why are we multiplying them by that number? Because we're trying to get them to the least common denominator. So we're giving each fraction what they don't have. Okay, so 3 times 3 on the top gives you 9, and 5 times 4 on the top gives me 20, and 9 plus 20 is 29. So we get 29 over 24. 29 over 24, that's B. All right, let's go to C. C is if you have 7 over 8 and you have 1 over 6. So again, we have 8 and 6. We want to get those, but in this one it's a subtraction. But we want to get those to the least common denominator. So the least common denominator, again, is 24, because 8 and 6 will both go to 24. So you multiply the left side by 3, you multiply the right side by 4. When you do that, 3 times 7 is 21. 1 times 4 is 4, and you'll subtract. So you got both denominators to 24, so you can say 21 minus 4 is 17. So 17 over 24. you're able to. So you can do this with adding or subtracting, is what we showed here. The goal is before you can add or subtract them straight across, they have to have the same denominator. So that's what we're trying to learn there. Before we can ever add or subtract these straight across, they've got to have the same denominator. So now we're going to try to do it with algebra over here on the right. It gets a little trickier, but let's look at it. So A says 3 over x plus 1 plus 4 over x minus 1. So these are two completely different things. This one is x plus 1. This one is x minus 1. So the least common denominator is going to be both of them, x plus 1 and x minus 1. So this fraction only had the x plus 1, so we've got to multiply it by x minus 1. This fraction only had the x minus 1, so we've got to multiply it by x plus 1. So you have to multiply the fraction by what it's missing. So each one of them is missing the other, right? So the first fraction is missing the x minus 1. The second fraction is missing the x plus 1. Now, that gives us a common denominator of x plus 1, x minus 1. Now we look up top. This first fraction had the x plus 1, so we're going to multiply it by x minus 1. So 3 times x minus 1. 3 times x is 3x, and 3 times negative 1 is negative 3. Plus, this second fraction had the x minus 1, so we're going to multiply it by x plus 1. 4 times x is 4x, and 4 times 1 is 4. So we have 3x minus 3 plus 4x plus 4. That's the top of our fraction, and that's over the x plus 1, x minus 1. So now we want to simplify it the best we can. 3x plus 4x gives me 7x, and negative 3 plus 4 gives me positive 1, and that's all I got to do. I'm done. Okay. So if you have two what they call binomials in the bottom, the x plus 1 and x minus 1, you just multiply each fraction by which one they're missing. Okay, so one's missing the x minus 1, the other's missing the x plus 1. All right, let's go to B. B is the same, except there's one of them that has both. So if you look at B, this fraction has x plus 3 in the bottom. This fraction has x plus 3 and x minus 1. So the least common denominator, they both have x plus 3, so that's good. But this one also has x minus 1. So x plus 3 and x minus 1 is going to be our least common denominator. That means this one's not missing anything. It's good. This one, though, only has the x plus 3. So you need to multiply it by x minus 1 because that's what it's missing. So in this problem in B, it's good because the second fraction already has both things. The first fraction is the one that's missing something. Okay? So we take the first fraction, this is where it gets a little tricky, 2x, and you multiply it by x minus 1. So 2x times x is 2x squared. And then 2x times negative 1 is negative 2x. So we have 2x, so when we add both things together, everything together, we have 2x squared minus 2x plus 4x. So the only things we could combine are the x's. So negative 2x plus 4x is a positive 2x. So our final answer is just the 2x squared plus 2x over our least common denominator. And our least common denominator, like we said, is the x minus 1 and the x plus 3. Okay? So again, it can be, you got to just follow the process. What's the least common denominator? What are the least things that they both have? This one has x plus 3 and x plus 3. This one has x minus 1, so we need to give this one x minus 1. And then we can make them into one fraction. The goal is to take two fractions and make it into one. That's the goal. That's what we're trying to do. All right, C. C, this one has x plus 3, and this one has x minus 1. So they're both missing the other. Okay? So the least common denominator is going to be x plus 3 and x minus 1. So this fraction over here had the x plus 3, so it's missing the x minus 1. This fraction over here had the x minus 1, so it's missing the x plus 3. So again, we're going to multiply. We did 2x times x minus 1 up here, so it's the same thing. 2x times x is 2x squared. 2x times negative 1 is negative 2x. Minus 4 times x is 4x, and it's a negative 4, because negative 4 times x is negative 4x, and negative 4 times 3 is negative 12. So that's how you get those numbers. And we want to just simplify. So 2x squared minus 2x minus 4x minus 12. So we can do 2x squared, and we can simplify the x's. A negative 2x minus 4x is negative 6x. So we have 2x squared minus 6x minus 12 over our least common denominator. So if you see two denominators and they're two completely different things, you just multiply the one side by what it's missing and then multiply the other side by what it's missing. It's almost like you're cross multiplying. You see, because the left-hand denominator, the top right needs that, and the right-hand denominator, the top left needs that. So it's almost like you're cross multiplying to try to give this fraction the x minus 1 and give this fraction the x plus 3 so that we can actually put them together. All right, so that was kind of the introduction of those. So this is the same as when you just had numbers, except now there's x's. So you don't have to make it any more, it doesn't have to be any more difficult just because there's x's now. All right, so I'll zoom out. Now, we're going to scroll down and we're going to do these four, we should be able to do these 4 examples. We're not going to have to do the second page, but we do need to get through the 4 examples on here for page 1. So monomial denominators. It says find a common denominator. Okay, example 1 says 1 over 6x plus 2 over 3x, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit more, plus minus 3 over 4x. We want to find the least common denominator. So all of them have an x in there. So we know x is going to be in our denominator. And then we have the numbers 6, 3, and 4. So we say, what's the smallest number that all 3 of those will go to? So 3, 6, and 4 will all go to 12. Okay? 3 and 6 will actually go to 6, but 4 doesn't go to 6. It goes 4, 8, 12. So we have to, 3, 6, and 4 all go to 12. So 12x is our least common denominator. So we've got to figure out how can we make all of these fractions 12x, right? So the first fraction is 6x. So to make 6x 12x, you just multiply by 2. The second fraction is 3x. So to make 3x 12x, you just multiply by 4. The third fraction is 4x. So to make 4x 12x, you just multiply by 3. Okay? So that's our goal in this. So you're just multiplying by 2 to make the first one 12x. You multiply by 4 to make the second one 12x. You multiply by 3 to make the third one 12x. So we want to multiply the tops by that number. Okay. Now, so in example 1, let's look. So on top, 2 times 1 is 2. 4 times 2 is 8, and negative 3 times 3 is a 9. It should be 3 times 3, right? Is 9, but it's minus 9. So what we get is 2 plus 4 minus 9. Or excuse me, 2 plus 8 minus 9. So 2 times 1 is 2, 4 times 2 is 8, and 3 times 3 is 9. So we get 2 plus 8 minus 9. Because we multiplied the first fraction by 2, that's how we got a 2. We multiplied the second fraction by 4, that's how we got 8, because 2 times 4. Multiply the third fraction by 3, that's how we got 9. So 2 plus 8 is 10, minus 9 is 1, so we get 1 over 12x. That's our final answer. 1 over 12x. That's all we got to do for example 1. Okay, let's move over to example 2. Example 2 looks a little bit different, but it's still going to be kind of the same setup. All right, in example 2, we're looking at the bottom of the fraction. Okay, both of them have an x, so we have to put x in our least common denominator. This one has 2 y's. This one only has 1. So we have to go to what the 1 has. So the 1 has 2 of them, so we have to go to that one. So y squared is in our least common denominator. So we have an x and we have a y squared. This one has a 4, this one only has 1, so we have to go to 4. So 4xy squared is our least common denominator. That's what both of them have together. So if 4xy squared is what you're going to want the bottom to be, the bottom of your fraction to be, then this first fraction already has xy squared. So all it's missing is a 4. So you need to multiply the top and the bottom by 4. That's it. In the second fraction, this has 4xy. So it's missing another y to get to y squared. So you multiply the top and the bottom by y. So let's do that. So in the first fraction, to get 4xy squared on the bottom, you multiply the top by 4. So 4 times 5y is 20y. And 4 times 2 is 8. And then in the second fraction, y times 2x is just 2xy. And y times negative 4 is negative 4y. And then you want to simplify what you can. Now, the only thing you can simplify is on top, you have 20y minus 4y, you can say is 16y. Okay? So you can simplify that fraction. You can say 20y minus 4y is 16y. So you end up with 16y plus 8 plus 2xy over that common denominator. Okay, it gets a little confusing when you have all the x's and y's, but you can do it. So again, this is your final fraction, but you want to simplify your like terms. Simplify 20y minus 4y to give you 16y right there. We're going to go over some of the ones you do later in just a little bit. All right, let's go to number 3. We got 2 more to do, and that's it, and then we'll get to the work. Example 3. Look at this one. You have 7x squared y on the bottom, and you have 21xy squared. So the number 7 and 21 will both go to, the lowest number that they both go up to is 21. So because 7, 14, 21. So that works. So 21 actually works. So 21 is the least common denominator. This one has 1x, but this one has 2. So x squared is in our denominator. This one has 1y, but this one has 2. So y squared is in our denominator. So it's 21 x squared, y squared. That's what we're trying to get to make them all the same. So in the first one, we have 7x squared y. So we need to get to 21 x squared y squared. So we're at 7. So to get to 21, we need to multiply by 3. And we only have 1 y, so to get to y squared, we need to multiply another y. So 3y is what we're multiplying to that first fraction to get to the 21x squared y squared. So 3 times 3y, that gives me 9y. Now over here, I already have 21, so I don't have to do anything here. I already have y squared, so I don't have to do anything here. I just need another x to get to x squared. So I have to multiply the top by x. Well, 4 times x is just 4x. So my final answer is 9y plus 4x divided by my least common denominator, 21x squared y squared. That's my final answer for number 3. That's all I have to do. Once you get it, it's really not super difficult. You just have to figure out the least common denominator and then multiply it by what it's missing. All right, let's go to the last one. Number 4. Example 4 says 3, 8x to the third. So you have 8x to the third, y to the third on the bottom. And the other one only has a 4 and only has one x and one y. So x to the third and y to the third are the biggest x's and y's. So that's in your least common denominator. And then 4 and 8 will both go to 8. So that's good. So 8x to the third, y to the third can be my least common denominator. Now, the left fraction already has that, so that's good. You don't have to do anything to that fraction on the left. The fraction on the right is the one that you have to change. So the fraction on the right now has 4xy. We want to get it to 8x to the third, y to the third. So to get from 4 to 8, you got to multiply by 2. To get from x to the third, we need x squared. And to get from y to the third, we need another y squared. We need 2 more y's. So we're going to multiply the top by 2x squared y squared. Well, it's just 1 anyway. So 1 times that is just going to be 2x squared y squared. So our fraction is 3 minus 2x squared y squared over our denominator. Our denominator is our least common denominator. 8x to the third, y to the third. And that's question number 4. So what we're going to do is, those are the only ones we're going to have to do. So what we're going to do, we're going to stop there on question number 4. That's going to be all the notes for today. Then we're going to take the first, so that second page, we're not going to be working on it. What we're going to do is we have to find what's going to be the least common denominator, okay, for all of them before we can even start the problem. We have to find the least common denominator. So that's like step 1 of this. And I'm kind of setting these up for you so you can do them in just a second. So the least common denominator in number 1, 3 and 6 will both go to what number? 6, yeah. Smallest number they get to is 6. And we also have an x. So we got to make sure that both fractions have 6x. So you got to figure out what you need to multiply by to get both of them to 6x. The first one you don't have to do anything, right? So the second one you got to figure out what do I need to multiply the bottom by to get to 6x. All right, let's go to number 2. In number 2, 5x minus 20 is actually 5 times x minus 4. So the least common denominator in number 2, they both have x minus 4. So that's in our least common denominator. But this one has a 5 also. So 5x minus 4 is our least common denominator. So the first fraction is good. It's got everything. The second fraction only has the x minus 4. So we'll need to end up multiplying it by 5, right, to get it to the least common denominator. All right, let's go to number 3. This is 3x plus 2, because you could take that GCF out. So both of them have x plus 2, and this one also has 3. So the least common denominator is 3 times x plus 2. So you're going to write the 2 fractions. The second fraction is good. It already had 3 times x plus 2. The first fraction only had x plus 2, so you got to multiply it by 3 so that you can then have the least common denominator. All right, number 4. This looks like a factoring one. What 2 numbers multiply to give me 12 and add to give me 7? What multiplies to give me 12 and adds to give me 7? 4 and 3, right? So y plus 3 and y plus 4 is what that is. Okay, so that's what's on the bottom. So both sides have y plus 3, so that's in my least common denominator. And then this side has y plus 4 also. So that's the least common denominator. Y plus 3 and y plus 4 plus y plus 3 and y plus 4. All right, so that means in the first fraction, I need to multiply by y plus 4 to get it ready. In the second fraction, it's already good because it has both, the y plus 3 and the y plus 4. All right, 4 and 12 will both go to what number? What's the smallest number that 4 and 12 both go to? 12. And then we have an x. So 12x should be our denominator. So the first fraction is good. Or the second fraction, sorry, is good. It already has 12x. The first fraction only has 4x. So we got to figure out what do I multiply it by to get to 12x. That's it. Okay, and then number 6 looks like one of the ones we did in the example on the right at the top. This one has x minus 5 in its denominator. The second one has x minus 7 in its denominator. So that means you have to multiply each fraction by what they're missing. So the first fraction is missing the x minus 7. So we got to multiply it by x minus 7. The second fraction is missing the x minus 5. So we got to multiply it by x minus 5. And then we can combine it. So what you want to do, we found the least common denominator for these. Now we want to multiply each fraction by what it's missing, and then we can add them up straight across. Now, the only two I haven't given you that are on today's, let's go through it real quick. Number 7 and 8, okay? Number 7, what you should do, I ran out of room on here, but in number 7, you have x minus 6 on the bottom of one fraction. So it's 3x over x minus 6 plus 6x over 4x minus 24. 4x minus 24 is 4 parentheses x minus 6 if you take out the greatest common factor. So their least common denominator for number 7 is x minus 6 and then a 4. So we want 4x minus 6 plus 4x minus 6. So the bottom of the second fraction in number 7 is good to go. It's got the 4 and x minus 6. The first fraction only has x minus 6, so you got to multiply it by 4. So we multiply by 4, and then you can add straight across. Okay. Let's look at the last one, number 8. You got 5 over y plus 10 plus 4y over, this says y squared plus 12y plus 20. What two numbers multiply to give me 20 and add to give me 12? Multiply to give me 20, add to give me 12. Yeah, easy one. 2 10. 2 and 10s. So y plus 10 and y plus 2. So think about it. The least common denominator, they both have y plus 10. And then this one also has y plus 2. So it's going to be y plus 10 and y plus 2. So my first fraction is going to be missing the y plus 2. So I've got to multiply it by y plus 2. My second fraction is good. It's already got the y plus 10 and the y plus 2. Okay? So all I'm doing here, I've given y'all the least common denominators and kind of set it up for you. You want to multiply the fraction by what it's missing from the bottom to get it to the least common denominator. Once you have them as the same denominators, then you can just add or subtract straight across. And so you want one fraction as your final answer. You'll add or subtract the top straight across. Okay? So that's all we need to do in order to get that right. So like for number 1, just to give you one of them, number 1 was 6x, right? So 5 over 6x was good. What were we missing? What are we missing from the bottom of this second fraction? You have 3, you need to get to 6. You got to multiply by what? 2, and then you need an x. You got to multiply by 2x. So if we multiply by 2x, 2 times 2x is 4x. So we have 5 minus 4x. Now you can't do that and say that's 1x. No, that would be if it was 5x minus 4. 5 minus 4x, you can't, there's nothing you can do. So we just write it. 5 minus 4x over 6x. And that would be our final answer. So you just write them as one fraction at the very end. And that is all we're doing. So 1 through 8 is all we're going to do. You don't have to worry about that second page. That'll be later for like review. So we're just going to do the 1 through 8. I've set them all up on here. And then you'll be able to simplify them and finish it up. And that'll be it for today.